doubt.
All right.
All right. So let's move on. So I've lumped the next three kind of as like concepts because it's such a, but there are three concepts that I think we really need to include in training. The first one, the anti-rotation one, which we'll talk about, I think is for everybody, the triple flexion, triple extension, I do think is for everybody as well. But specifically athletic power and movement comes from triple flexion, triple extension, which we'll talk about.
Okay.
So anti-rotation, triple flexion, and triple extension are more concepts, and they're combinations of other movements, and together they're applied to build your athleticism as much as you can.
Okay.
So they can be movements that we do in everyday life, which we can talk about.
Yeah.
And in my head, again, I'm big on this like nutrient for the for the musculoskeletal system. I see this as like your vitamins and minerals, like the quality of the food you're eating versus like the big macros. Like I see these as more like the supplemental things that you need in order to be healthy versus like the big things.
Got it.
Because it's in my head, if you don't have the big things, it will be hard to get these.
Right. So it's the
not,
macro versus the micro, but the micro is super important.
Right. If you lack iron, you might feel crappy.
Yep.
Right. So this is how I see these as kind of like the icing on the cake, but that you need. So
100% vital to longevity and being your best optimal self. Yep. Okay.
So that's just how my brain works.
All right. And so it's anti-rotation, triple flexion, and triple extension. So all right, why don't we which one do you want to start with?
We'll start with triple flexion, triple extension. So what I envision with these is if you think about somebody sprinting, like in mid-air sprinting.
Yep.
And their front leg is really high in the air and bent, and their back leg, like a lunge, is all the way behind them. Okay. So triple flexion is that front leg. So it refers to flexion of the hip, which is bringing your thigh towards your belly. Bending of the knee, flexion of the knee, which is bringing your heel towards your butt, and dorsiflexion of the ankle, which is pulling your toes up.
Yeah.
So if you march in place, the leg that's coming up is getting into a triple flexion position.
Got it. Would you say that squatting is a form of triple flexion?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I didn't even have to tell you that, did I?
Yeah. I mean, and I've got somewhat of a fitness junkie background, so
but you can see it, right? So absolutely, squatting is triple flexion, right? A deadlift is getting more towards triple extension, as you move to like a power clean. So because now you're adding up on the toes, but
so triple flexion, your hip is bending, your knee is flexing, and your ankle's kind of pushing
like a
off
march,
the ground,
right?
And again, a march is a good way to think about that. When that knee's coming up and your toes and your toes are pointed towards the sky.
Correct.
Right? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So it's the opposite of triple extension. So you can talk, through like bias of triple flexion. Squatting for sure is one of those.
Yeah.
But it really sets the body up for triple extension. So triple extension, I guess we got to talk about them together.
Yep.
So let's just stay with triple extension is hip extension, which is bringing your leg behind you. Knee extension, which is straightening of your knee, and plantar flexion, which is pushing off your toe.
Okay.
So again, think of a sprinter in the air, that back leg that's back.
Yeah.
In a triple extended position.
Okay.
That's really what we'll talk through that a little deeper, but that's really the power movement of cornerstone of athleticism.
Right. Yeah. And sprinting is a good one, right? Because it's like the leg that's in the air versus the leg that's on the ground. The one in the air is doing flexion.
Correct.
And the one on the ground is doing extension.
Correct.
Yep.
So we had to say that, but from a triple flexion standpoint, think about, muscles are just rubber bands, right?
Yeah.
To some degree. So the further you stretch that rubber band, the more it can recoil. So if you don't achieve triple flexion, you won't peak triple extension. Does that make sense? So the better your triple flexion is, the more range, the more you're building up the ability to push through into triple extension.
Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah. It's a physics lesson in a way, right?
It's physics. Yeah.
It's
I
like
hate
the
physics
pendulum.
unless we're talking about the body.
It's like when you start the ball up here, and you let it go, it's only going to come back. It can't go higher than where you let it go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, it just, the idea is it pre-stretches, it preloads the extensor group to have that elastic reaction that really is what pushes an athlete, which is the power, the fastest triple extension.
Right.
But you need triple flexion also to do that.
Okay.
So sometimes training triple flexion, you need to do like high knees is training triple flexion of the front leg, right? Of that leg up.
Right.
Sometimes I have people like push on the wall and do like a high knee drill to the wall. And maybe you and I may have done that.
We have done,
but that's triple flexion, with a band around your feet. So sometimes you have to strengthen flexion.
Yeah.
Which a lot of people are like, well, my hip flexors are tight. They don't need to be strengthened. It's like, well, a lot of times your hip flexors actually need to be strengthened and they just act tight. So, because they're protecting you or they're trying so hard for you. So triple flexion is, again, really sets you up for triple extension is the best way I think about it.
Yeah. Now, in these examples, there's not really, or you don't have them, but you don't have like the activity of daily life associated with these, right? Like,
well, I mean, I did triple flexion extension are really talked about in the athlete. You can, I mean, like triple flexion to some degree is squatting,
with the squat.
So that's why that's why you and I have had a hard time saying what goes where, because triple flexion, yes, squatting is a form of triple flexion, but it's all context and all that so I generally talk about them more from a training the athlete side than in regular day. But again, catching yourself in a lunge is triple flexion.
Right.
If you fall is triple flexion. Reaching up into a high cabinet can be triple extension.
Yep.
So triple extension, like athletically, is like a power clean. So a lot of times people don't pull high enough before they get under the weight. So when you start to look at like power cleans and snatches and things like that, it's a lot of triple extension movements that you're training with those that develop the athleticism behind somebody.
Yep.
So it is a little bit of a higher level thing, but triple extension is present when we walk, right? So it's present, and so thus triple flexion is too. It's just the degree of which it's present. When you sprint, your knee comes really high because you need to propel yourself a lot further. When you walk, you don't necessarily get triple flexion per se, your legs coming through, but you bend at your knee, you bring your toe up to clear the ground, and you go down. So triple flexion extension is present when we walk. It's just the degrees of that's a little different.
Yep. All right. And these concepts, are you using them again because it's more in the athletic realm? Are you still working on these concepts with people that let's say are beginners and have had either complex surgeries or even basic injuries? Are you working on these concepts, these movement concepts, with them in the rehab process versus
I think again they like overlap, right? So like they overlap and you might not realize you're doing them. So probably until I started getting into the mentorship I am now, like I didn't necessarily think about them a lot.
Right.
Where now it's like I can't not think about them.
Right.
But like if an athlete, if I have somebody that had a knee surgery and their ultimate goal is to be back to sport, I'm thinking about this as soon as possible.
Yeah.
I'm starting to groove this in as soon as possible. A big issue, Fred Duncan that we'll have next week, he's very big on triple extension and training sprinting. And like, you have to train this or else it's not going to be better. So if we can start the foundation simply by doing a hands on a wall march or a sled push or something that is constrained to start, that you just achieve that motion in. Yeah, I do have that thought in my brain right away that we're training triple extension because I want to groove patterns for people for whatever they want to get back to.
Cool.
Yep. Okay.
Yep.
So that's triple flexion, triple extension. We'll probably go off on a tangent. I think we should talk to Fred a lot about that as we talk to him.
Yeah.
He's really fantastic to talk about and can shed some more light on there too.
Okay.
So, so that is that. And then the last concept really is anti-rotation. So again, this is really a concept, and this can be associated with any other movement, almost like the carry. Like you can make any movement
Right.
Anti-rotation movement, which just means anti-rotation just means that you're teaching the body to prevent excessive movement when it's challenged from somewhere. So if you're walking down the streets of New York City and back in the day and you get bumped, can you handle that force and get yourself back? That's anti-rotation to some degree. Okay. So like in regular day, can you exist, if the door comes flying back at you because somebody shut it on you, can you stop it with one hand and not fall over? Anti-rotation.
Yeah.
When you hit a ball, can you keep your force center and not let that force tip you? That's anti-rotation.
Okay.
So there's anti-rotation, which is, can you maintain yourself against force?
Yeah.
And then there's rotational training, right? Like learn to control rotation, like a golf swing or a baseball swing or what have you.
Right.
The anti-rotation is more like, can you generate stiffness in your body to keep your body going?
Right. So yeah, I'm thinking like in New York, if you're getting bumped on the shoulder, the ability to actually win that battle with that passerby, right, and walk through them and keep your torso straight. You didn't get rotated and pushed back by them. Right. Which your body was strong enough to withhold that force and keep moving forward and not rotate or turn.
Yeah.
Because I guess, probably your core was so strong to keep you taut. And that might in training mean that you've worked through turning your body and you've worked on rotating it so that those muscles are strong so that you can control when it turns, depending on how much force it gets.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's a weird that it's a movement concept where in a way it's the way I'm thinking about it is just, your average Joe or fitness junkie that's not an expert, but I'm thinking of almost an anti-movement, and it's like it has anti in it, right? It's
right.
It's stability.
So think about baseball or golf. When you impact the ball,
yep.
If you can't sustain that force, you're either gonna dip, right? So you're gonna dip or do something versus like be able to control that rotation and manage that rotation as you go through it.
Right.
So like at point of impact is almost anti-rotation.
Yeah.
Even though you're rotating through it, it's
right.
Rotation in itself is something that is not trained.
Yeah.
And you can see this in people when they walk. So if you think about people as we lose strength, we tend to be more penguin-like, forward and backward, and we lose our arm swing and we lose our zest of the walk. Right. You could see that, like people's pelvis doesn't rotate anymore, people's arms aren't swinging.
Right.
That's because their ability to manage rotation isn't there. So there is a lot of concepts for rotation that go into everyday life.
Right. And I'm even thinking of the baseball player who like smacks a 450-foot home run. His ending position is in a twist with his legs split and all that, but he's perfectly balanced.
Right.
And he's upright.
Yep.
Because he has such control of his body in a position where anybody else would fall backwards or lean to the side. They're perfectly stable and they're on their front heel.
Yep.
So and they're in a split position, but yet through that rotation, their core, you see them, they're straight.
Yeah.
Their torso straight. Yeah.
So, and if you think rotation as well, rotation again to me in my head is really the transition of force as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't totally love talking like core strength. I think it's like core control. What is the core able to manage, and what the hell is the core anyway? Like, the core is the whole torso. Like, what is it? But the core's goal is actually to transition force. So in your baseball player there, if he comes through and he doesn't have the rotational control, he can't transmit the force he's generating from the ground up, from the legs, through his torso, to his arms, to his bat. So that is a rotational force. So when you're talking about that, you start with anti-rotation. Can you manage yourself here when forces are placed upon you or not.
Got it.
And then you can go ahead and say, now let's rotate and let's learn to transition that force through your body. In golf, in the TPI world, it's a huge discussion of like, is the wave coming? Like, are you able to can you see that you have all this force through your legs that then goes to your hips, that then goes through your torso, that then goes to your arms? Like, and that's a wave. And if you think about the most perfect wave, it's huge, it peaks at the top, and that's when everything's systematically going together. So rotation is a huge transition of force through the body.
Yep.
So that's anti-rotation. Rotation in general is something that really needs to be trained. I do think it's a key, micronutrient that's left out a lot, or unintentional, or is put in, but not with an intention of putting it in.
Yep.
Like you can offload somebody, you can put a weight on one side when they're squatting. That's anti-rotation. You can do farmer's carry with 70 on one side and 20 on the other side. That's anti-rotation. You're just getting used to various loads throughout the body.
Okay. Yeah. And are there like associated, again, the language thing is always going to come back and bite me. Right. Are there associated issues if you ignore these 3 nutrient concepts that kind of progress themselves in daily life, or is it more, and again, it could be more athletic endeavor?
Yeah. I mean, I think yes to both. How does that look? It's individualized, right? And so I can't give you a clear-cut answer on that. I do think, if you're not training these or intentionally training them, especially like triple extension or anti-rotation, you're really missing out on a lot of like force generation. So you're listening. So it might not, it could be an injury or it could be performance, so the later 3 to me are from a performance side for athletes enormous. And again, it doesn't mean you shouldn't squat, and you shouldn't lunge, you shouldn't deadlift, you need that too. But if you're not incorporating these, I don't think you're your best self when it comes to performance and power.
Right.
So
totally makes sense.
Yeah. So from a daily life, yes, they're there too. Like I said, like walking is rotation. There's a lot. There's pelvic rotation. There's trunk rotation. Think about arm swinging. Somebody who's on the move, they're swinging their arms. They're rotating.
Right.
And if you don't have control of your body, you might rotate more, or you might just stiffen up and just say, I'm going to just walk like this. Like walk like a penguin.
Right.
So yeah. So that's more how I see that.
Yeah. And so again, in these 3 concepts, again, if you're going to equate them to the minerals, if you're getting your minerals, you're less likely to get disease or, have some sort of ailment that needs to be treated. Right. So it's the same way. Once you get the foundation of the macronutrients and the primal movements we talked about, and you add these concepts, it's only going to further enhance and implant and engrave the good habits of movement that will have you less likely to have to see you.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
All right.
Exactly.
Cool. Should we just do real brief high level overview recap of the movements so that, this will be a good final slide or, mini clip we can send out over social, just the 10 movements. And then, if you're interested, come here and watch the full episode and we rant on each of them.
Got it. All right. So yeah. So in this episode, we talked about the primal movements, which to me are the key nutrients for the musculoskeletal system, and just kind of brings us back to our roots of movement, like what we just naturally did without thinking about it back in the day. So walking, pushing, pulling, lunging, squatting, carrying are really the macro big old nutrients that support our musculoskeletal system.
Yep.
You perform them every day. You perform them without thinking about them until you think about them, but you do these movements every day. They are ones that, if you're not addressing that, you may overload by just changing your activity, whether it's changing your activity because of seasonal changes and managing your home, or whether it's that you want to start playing pickup hoops or be, in general, more active.
Yep.
So they're just the way our body was meant to move, and they're foundational blocks to bigger things.
Yep.
They're the same for everybody.
That's key. That's key because there's so much customization, right? And workouts that we've talked about in past episodes too. It's like there's so many fads, and there's so many different workout regimens, from CrossFit to pickup basketball to weekend warrior golf to runners. These concepts should be done for everybody, and they
Right.
should be incorporated in your workouts. And maybe you are getting them, if you're a yoga person, maybe you're getting all of them through doing a good yoga workout, but there might be some that you're neglecting that you would want to incorporate in some sort of either strength training, or other activity that supplements what you love to do in life.
Yep, totally. And I'm thinking back, I was on a podcast with two of my peers up here that run a kettlebell studio. Chris and Mike run kettlebell works up by me.
Yeah.
And we were really like kind of laughing about it, is like, when people come in, the important part is that you know somebody's goals, right? So if you come in and you're like, I want to golf, da, 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 like, okay, you want to golf? Great. We're going to push and pull and lunge and squat and carry. Right. And then somebody else comes in, they're like, I play pickup soccer. You're like, soccer? I got it. You're going to push and pull and lunge and squat and carry. Right. And so, when we look at, I laugh because to me, are there key things that we do in training for specific sports? Sort of. But more to me, it's marketing and messaging to that individual. That's the sport. So if I have a golfer, I'm going to say, okay, your deadlift is going to help you generate power as you're coming through and hitting the ball.
Yeah.
If you're a soccer player, I'm going to say, okay, your deadlift is going to help you generate power when you're cutting and moving, right? So I think that exact quote, we could look on my other podcast with these guys, but it was like, I think Mike said it. He was like, that's awesome. I'm so excited. You're going to push and pull and squat and lunge and carry. And like somebody comes into their goal, like, I want to pick up my grandkids. Awesome. We're going to push and pull and squat and lunge and carry. And, so it's just the concepts that are there, and they're the foundations. And yes, like how much you load them for that individual or based on the individual's goals, or more so how you verbalize how it's going to help their activity hits home with the individual, but it doesn't change the foundations. And me, like my first principles of movement, that's my big, who, I relate with the most. And I just love this group of individuals because these are the foundational pillars.
Yep.
And build the foundations and build them well, and then go ahead and load them and build them to where you need to be for whatever it is that you want to do in your life. Yeah. So that's kind of the idea behind these. So the big movements, and then of course there's our concepts, which I consider like our micronutrients, which are triple flexion, triple extension, and anti-rotation. Yes, I believe they're important for everybody. I also believe they're a very large cornerstone to strength and power in the athletes. So I think like you said, a lot of movements like squatting or even lunging put us in positions where we are naturally doing these. But training them out further and intentionally training them is crucial for knowing what we're doing to build the athletic population up.
Yep. Very cool. And it's, it's sparking, because we touched on it. You just touched on it, but it's sparking ideas for probably, and we'll talk offline, but like other episodes versus general training, which these you're saying are for everybody, no matter what. Versus sport specific, which you just touched on, like, well, maybe there is, or maybe there isn't. There's got to be, I guess the sport specific training would be to play the sport and do the drills in the situation. Basketball, I'm just thinking cutting off screens and curling and doing that running, but that's on the court doing those drills for that sport.
Right.
It's not fundamental.
It's not general programming.
It's not
general preparation programming is this.
Right.
And that's 80% of what all programs look like. There's, it's funny you can get, to me, everything else is just marketing and not marketing, individualizing to the individual in front of you about what they want.
Right.
And what's our ability to talk through these foundations, but the foundations stay the same for everybody.
Right.
And then how are you relating to that? Now, would you as a rower try to get a more powerful pull? Sure. It's sure, but you still need to be able to push in order to maintain your overall health.
Right.
Would you as a golfer, work a little bit more anti-rotation? Sure, but I'm still going to do that, or I might put a club, or I might relate that movement into, relate that movement to that, to connect with that individual, to get them buy-in on why they should do it. That's the sports specificity to me. Like an offensive lineman needs to bench press 400 pounds because he has got another 400-pound guy coming at him.
Right.
To me, a bench press is the most functional for an offensive lineman. Doesn't mean it's not good for anybody, but that to me is a sports specific thing for him. Right.
Yeah.
So,
and again, you don't ignore the others, but it's just something where you're customizing the percentage that you would allocate of time spent on those, maybe slightly tweaked depending on the specialization of a sport or the activity that somebody wants to do.
sure.
But you're still not ignoring all the other stuff. You need the pull you need that pull side for every person that needs more of a push in their activity, because if they get hurt doing a pull during activity of daily life, or the one aspect of the game or the activity that requires a pull, and they're not prepared for it, doesn't matter how much you can push. So that it's funny, like the sport specification is really just playing the sport and doing the drills.
Right. That's the coaching of the sport.
That's the coaching of the sport. So you as a PT or a personal trainer or strength and conditioning coach would say, all right, what are the activities they're doing most? Let's just make sure that these 5 macronutrients and these 3 micronutrients are part of the program so that they don't get hurt doing that stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. Very cool. So we'll have these slides up throughout. We'll post them on social, but these are the fundamentals to human movement, and doing them will reduce your time in the healthcare system if you're doing them properly and you're doing it right, and you'll be less likely to have to see Allison as a patient. And so we're taking money out of Allison's pockets today by giving this knowledge to all of you. But these are the activities that you want to do to be your optimal self. And it doesn't mean you have to be a meathead in the weight training room. It's just that these are the types of movements that you want to train your body, because they happen whether you're in the weight room or not. They happen in everyday life. And it's the everyday life stuff that most likely brings you into the hospital or the ER or the doctor's office with nagging aches and pains.
Mm-hmm.
So get these movements in. We'll have future episodes where we're going to break down various ways to do it. So we just wanted everyone to have today, here's the types of movements you should be doing, how you incorporate them. We'll touch on later on in future episodes. We'll break down each of these, maybe a full episode for each, or 2 to 3 per episode, on variations of what to do, how often to do them, and all that stuff. But Body Movement Podcast. You move your body, and this is how you should be moving it.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks for joining us. Episode 10. Like and subscribe buttons down below. Thanks. We're inching our way up there in terms of viewers and subscribers, and we're just going to keep grinding, keep podcasting, people. Don't give up after episode 6. My God. And we will see you on the next episode. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you.